Really excited to share on a topic for training that
Yes.
is something very, very close to our heart, something that we had to work through. And I think probably something that, what do you reckon? Probably one of the biggest things that holds people back from becoming
Yes.
who they know they need to become. And so tonight we're excited to share on this topic. And we believe that if you can master this topic, you can go, there's actually nothing you can't do.
True.
You can actually accomplish your future desired state, zero questions, no doubt about it, if you're committed to master this one thing. And so we're going to talk about that tonight and give you some keys that have helped us. And so, Rena, what are we going to talk about?
Yes, very excited to share with you all amazing people. Our topic tonight is only action cures fear. Right? And how good is that? It's absolutely true. And who knows the acronym for fear? Have anyone heard that? It says false evidence appearing real. Okay, so it's a good way to remember fear. It's false evidence appearing real, and it certainly can feel real, but you know what? When we filter it through, we go, no, it's just appearing real. It's not actually, the action cures fear by stepping out. So you can feel the fear, but you know it's not actually that fear that's there. It's like, no, I need to press through that to overcome that, and so that I can obviously conquer it, because it's just false evidence appearing to be real. But that's great. We're gonna really look forward to share with you all about that. It's a bit like walking on the water. Nobody's going to walk on the water unless you step out of the boat, or at least attempt to step out of the boat. Otherwise, you're going to just stay dry in the boat. But if you want to get wet, you got to at least want to step out and have a go. Yes,
absolutely. And exactly like Rena said, only action can cure fear. If you take away one thing from tonight, it's this. Say it with me. Only action can cure fear. Say it again. Only action can cure fear. So what can cure fear? Only action. Thinking, can thinking cure fear? No. Thinking will not cure fear. What cures fear? Only action. Why do I say that for? Because whenever you face fear, for some reason, your brain forgets that only action cures fear, and it thinks that thinking will cure fear, and you'll sit and you'll think about your fear for a very long period of time and not overcome it. And how do I know this? Because every human being on the planet has done it. Overthinking about your fear leads to analysis paralysis.
Yes.
It leads to procrastination. It leads to excuse-itis. And for all of you who have read The Magic of Big Thinking, who's read that book, The Magic of Thinking Big?
Yes.
Chapter 3, as one of my favorite speakers, Bill Hawkins, likes to say, only action cures fear. And he talks about, there's a whole chapter in there. And I think the chapter before it is overcoming excuse-itis. And it's such a fantastic book to go back and reread. It's a long read, but some of the concepts that share in there are truly success principles. And The Magic of Thinking Big. I remember Chuck and Uma saying, Sean and Rena, you absolutely need to read this book and allow it to sink down deep on the inside of you, because in it is the secrets to success. And so, I heard it said that fear will make strangers of people who would have been your friends. And what does that mean? Rena's talking about false evidence appearing real. What is it like? Well, fear is suggestion. That's what it is. Fear is thoughts, which lead to feelings, which lead to suggestions about what could or may not happen. And tonight we're going to focus, there's a lot of different fears: fear of rejection, fear of failing, fear of all kinds of stuff. But the one fear we're going to focus on tonight is the fear of failure. And, we have ultimately found that this is the major one that hinders people from moving on. Some people are afraid of what other people think. But, obviously there's an element of that you need to overcome. But we find that if you can overcome the fear of failure, you will then have the courage to try. And if you are willing to continue to try, then you can overcome anything. There was a statement by Dale Carnegie, and I love it. I'm going to read you this quote. I think I've got it here somewhere. It says, "Most of the important things in the world have been accomplished by people who overcame the fear of failure and kept on trying when there seemed to be no hope at all. And that's really what overcoming the fear of failure will do. It'll give you the spirit that says, I can and I will. Somehow, some way, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to succeed. Everyone say definites of purpose, right? It's where you have a clear focus, a clear outcome. And tonight during the board plan, you would have heard me say, really to be successful, you have to get to a place where you cannot imagine your life without achieving that particular thing, or you can't imagine your life without that particular person in it. And therefore, you will be willing to do what most people won't be. And what that means is you have a definite focused purpose, which means you're willing to go through things that most people wouldn't. And so one of the things I guess you have to learn to deal with in this business is that you're not going to be good at everything you need to be good at to succeed in this business. Who has discovered that, right? You may be good at some of the things. Maybe you're good with time management. Maybe you're a good talker. Maybe you're good, good with time, organization. But there's going to be elements of this business that you are not good with, and you're going to have to grow. Okay. And so one of the things you have to learn to do is you have to learn to master certain fundamental areas of business. Okay. So let's talk about business. What areas do you have to master in our business? What do you reckon?
It's that listening, the reading, the associating, the authorship, making sure that we've got our conference tickets booked, making sure that, Jack's coming to town next week. He's pretty excited about that.
Some people, piece of cake, I can do that. But for some people, there's a big fear of failure you have to overcome, because maybe you didn't think you were a great reader. Maybe, you've never been great with budgeting. And so, for you to budget and be organized, maybe, you've always found it a challenge to get the kids to bed on time. And so being on time for things is challenging. Maybe, finding someone to look after the kids to go to conferences, like, oh my goodness, that really is challenging for you. Is anyone resonating with this? Like, yes. For some people, there's elements that, you're afraid to fail in. And so you kind of, you struggle with pushing through on that. And so that's one element you have to overcome. You have to learn, how am I going to overcome this? And you're probably going to have times where you do fail. There was days where I missed reading. To be honest, when I got started in this, I didn't think I was a good reader. And that was a roadblock for me, right? And so there was a limiting belief I'd put on myself, and I had to overcome my fear of sitting still, right? That I would get bored,
15 minutes.
And overcome that fear of some people say that's silly, Sean. No, it's serious. I feared wasting time. I feared that I was missing out on other things. Sitting still made me afraid that I was going to miss out on something fun that I could be doing. And I had to learn to reframe these things and to realize, well, what is reading doing? It's growing me, which is leading me closer to my future desired state. So, okay, we've got to overcome fear of failure. There's other elements we've got to overcome, right? Having conversations. That is a fundamental in this business, learning how to connect with people, growing our self-image to be able to have conversations, yes. Learning how to communicate effectively, who we're connected with, what's available, opening doors for people. And, if you have a couple of conversations that, don't go as smoothly as what you would like, or you get asked some questions you're not ready for, you feel like you failed. Anyone felt that before? You felt like you didn't know what to say. Yes. You felt exposed. And that feeling of failure is very soul opening, right? Very exposing. And it's not a nice feeling. And your brain is like a bank, and it records every transaction, every emotional transaction that happens in your life. And it records that you just had a conversation about this business with someone, and it made you, their response left you with an emotion that you didn't like, and your brain records that as a transaction. So next time you go to have conversation, the first thing your brain doesn't go, let's checking our transactions. Last time we did this led to a feeling that I didn't like. So let's maybe back away. And so there's a saying, it goes something along the lines of, the lower your self-image, the quicker you'll give up trying to get what you want. Mm-hmm. The lower your self-image, the quicker or the less resistance you'll be willing to go through to get what you want, the less failure you'll be willing to overcome. And so one of the key things you have to learn to do is build your self-image.
Yes.
If you want to overcome failure, if you want to overcome the fear of failure, the fear of having conversations, you have to build your self-image to the place where you realize I've got some value to add. You have to overcome the fear of what other people are going to say when you realize, well, why do people say that? Why do people think like that? And realizing, is it something that I said? Because if it's something that you said, guess what? You can fix that. But if it's something that they said based on their thought process, guess what? You can't fix that. Only they can fix that. And so you realize there's certain things within your control and certain things beyond your control. And so when you can learn to navigate this, you can slowly begin to reduce your fear of failure, because you realize, well, there's certain things I can do to control that. You know, if I said to someone, hey, I'll give you $10,000, you know, if you can, run around the block in a certain period of time. And let's say you're wearing a rain jacket, your old baggy pants, a pair of flip-flops, your hat on backwards and an old baggy, and just not great athletic kind of material. And you run around and you're like 2 seconds shy of the time. You could say, oh, I failed. Or you could say, boy, I reckon I could do that again. I didn't achieve it, but what's on the line is pretty good. I'm a little tired, but $10,000 would be a great reward to have. So you keep your eye fixed on the reward and go, what could I do to allow myself to perform better? And you might be, you know what, maybe I could trade my flip-flops for shoes. Mm-hmm. Maybe I could get rid of this big bulky jacket, and maybe I could put on my singlet, my running singlet. Maybe I could get on a pair of running shorts, and maybe that might help me perform better. Right. And then maybe you run around the block and you get, you're half a second shy. Right. And so you sit there and be, I'm a half a second shy. Now, some people would say, well, I failed. I tried again. That's it. Whereas a growth mindset would say, well, I don't have that far to go. I got to somehow figure out a way to get half a second quicker. Do you know what? I reckon if I trained and practiced on this for a few weeks, I reckon I could make up that second half a second, and I could piece of cake do that. Why? Because the reward, they're focused on the reward. They're focused on definites of purpose where they're going. And so one of the keys to overcoming fear is, you've got to be willing to make some changes and have a solution mindset and be willing to risk failure to get something big, right? So the reward's got to be worth it. I think one of the fundamental keys that you have to realize is in building your self-image, what's the motivation to build it? The reward has got to be worth it. I'll say that again. The only way you can overcome something in your life that has held you back for a long time is you have to find a motivation or a reward that is greater than the fear of staying where you are. Needs times by faith equals motivation. Anyone ever heard that before? Your need for your needs, right? The need that you have out of 100 times by your faith, your belief, your self-image that you can actually pull that off and do that will equal your motivation to keep going. It will equal your willingness to overcome those challenges. So one of the things you have to learn to do is never, never, never allow your future desired state to become so small that no longer motivates you. Your future desired state must always be something that has you stretching forth and reaching towards saying, I still desire that. I can't see my life without that. I will accomplish that. Okay, so there's some fantastic things here that we're going to keep covering tonight. Rena, anything you want to speak into?
Yeah, and I think one thing that, you were sharing earlier this week with some of the team is like making that dream part of your core values. We all say about in this business that, we want to live by our core values. We want to have more time for the people that we love. We want to have more finances to be more generous, right? All those things are the values that we want to live by. But when last have you made sure that your dream is part of your value? Like Sean mentioned today, and even in the board plan saying, it has to be something that you want and not willing to let go of. It's like, I can't imagine my life not living without it. So absolutely, fear of failure is rooted in that lack of clarity about what we really want. Okay, you think you want, but actually what you want is everyone's approval. So we got to let go of people's approval. That's another thing that we can fear of, what other people think of us, right? But it's your dream and your desire and that to earn your time back, to impact people greater than that. Attempting is like sharpening your sword. Can I just tell you tonight, you have permission to fail. Okay, if you think you can build this business without failing, you are so mistaken. It's okay to fail because the failure in this arena isn't fatal. Failure is a good thing. I think we have to change. It's another thing we have to change our mindset about. Often we think like failure is, fatal, like we're not going to be able to get up. No, I'm telling you, the more you fail, all the small fails that happens in this, taking that messy action, failing forward. But the main thing that Shauna I've really taken away from this arena, and Chakaduma especially saying, Shauna Arena, when you fail, you get up and you evaluate and you go again so that you can continue to grow in that. You have to be brave with your life. We have to be called to want to change, called to want to embrace failure in some degree. Going out and going, okay, I'm going to embrace that I might not do my Masawa perfect today. I'm going to embrace not maybe be able to share everything that I had on my heart to share with somebody when I practice my next conversation, some qualifying questions I might ask, some deepening questions. You might forget some. I've been there on a spot thinking like, yep. And then I'm like, I just went blank. Like now I'm leading this conversation down somewhere I didn't really want to lead it because I forgot my questions. So that's okay. I walk away and go, okay, I failed in that conversation. Not fatal failure, but failure of what can I learn from it,
So good. So Rena has just shared a couple of really powerful thoughts there. And one of the biggest parts that it leads you to is, again, what we started with, the only way that you can master failure, the fear of failure, the only way you can master it is by daily taking action to overcome it. Daily taking action to overcome it. If you do something on a daily basis, the compound effect of that will lead to consistency, which leads to a greater level of courage. Your courage builds when you do something daily, right? You do that same thing daily, you become more courageous, and eventually you get to a place where you have the boldness to be willing to do that. This stupid fear of failure keeps stopping me from going where I'm going. And the more you hang out with them, the more you just go, every time you build your courage a little bit, and eventually one day you go, that's it. I'm sick and tired of living like this. I am going to pay the price that it demands, which is I'm going to take action. That's ultimately what the power of association will do. It'll lead you to a place where you're willing to take action. Everyone say, take action.
Take action.
You got to take action. You could have the best mental masawa in the world, but unless you take action, you cannot make anybody aware unless you're, talking to an alien who can read your mind, right? And then, probably by then, there's probably no need for this business.
They don't exist.
They don't exist, right?
On.
So moving on. All right, we're going to get distracted, right? So, you have to learn to master failure. Okay. And the way you're going to have to master failure is by taking action and learning what steps do I need to take. The reason that I'm saying that is because failure unmastered will break down your morale. It'll destroy your self-confidence. It'll steal your enthusiasm. It'll dull your imagination. And it will steal and drive away your definites of purpose. Right? Let me say that again. If you don't master the fear of failure, it'll break down your morale. It'll destroy your self-confidence. It'll subdue your enthusiasm. It'll dull your imagination, and it will drive away your definites of purpose. Do you know what that leads to? It leads to disappointment, hopelessness. And we've all met people who started off enthusiastic. We've all met people who wanted something out of life. They hit through a couple of hard, difficult things in their life, and they became disappointed, dull, negative, fixed-minded. But here's the good news. At any time, anybody can decide to change. What do you have to change? Change your mindset. So here's a couple of things that I want you to take on board. Number one, there is no risk way risk-free way to build this business and see it magically work for you. It's not possible, right? There's no risk-free way to achieve anything successful. So you're going to have to get used to the fact, to overcome fear, you're going to have to be willing to take a risk. So the question is the path that you're going to go down, does it lead to what you want? And in this case, the answer should be yes, because there's a whole cloud of witnesses who have gone before you who are showing you the byproduct of what's at the end of this path. So the question is then, okay, if I'm going to do it, how did these guys go about it? Did they do it little bit by little bit? It's like ripping a Band-Aid off incredibly slowly. Imagine you had a 20-meter long Band-Aid strapped all over your body and you decided to rip it off tiny, 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 tiny little bit. That you'd be like, in intense agony and pain.
For a while.
Most of the people that we've seen and observed that have succeeded in this business, grown to become the people they need to become, right? Grown to build the businesses they desire and live the lives they desire. They haven't been overnight successes, but one thing they've done is they've gone all in. They've just got to a place. It might have taken them 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. They got to a place where they said, that's it. I'm just going to go for it. I believe this path leads to everything that I desire. So I'm going to go big or I'm going to go home. Who's heard of Babe Ruth? You ever heard of the famous baseball player Babe Ruth, right? He used to have a saying, which was this. If you don't know much about Babe Ruth, he had the record for a long time for the most home runs ever hit, right? But he also held the record for a time being of the most strikeouts. So if you don't know anything about baseball, you get three, you're allowed to have three swings that when, the ball's in the hitting zone. And if you miss it 3 times, you're out, right? And Babe Ruth said this: never let the fear of striking out get in the way of attempting greatness. I'll say that again. Never let the fear of striking out get in the way of attempting greatness. The reason that we all know Babe Ruth's name is not because he had the greatest number of strikeouts. Why do we know his name? Because he hit the greatest number of home runs for a long period of time. But the cost of that was a lot of failure, a lot of strikeouts. Do you think there was some frustration during the strikeouts? Of course there was, but he never took his eyes off what he was shooting for, which was greatness, which was to be the home run king. And you know what? That's what he attempted and achieved with his life. And so one of the things Rena and I would say is this: see failing as the goal. See failing and making mistakes as the goal. Why do I say that for? Because if you're not failing and you're not making mistakes, then you're not making progress. It means you've hit a plateau, right? If you're just lifting weights and it doesn't hurt at all, and you can lift it like 50 times without any pain, you have reached a plateau. You are no longer growing, right? And so you have to get to the place where you go, the only way that I'm going to grow is making mistakes. So in weightlifting, I don't know if you know much about weightlifting, but there's this saying called push to failure, right? And so if you know anything about that, it's a term they use in weightlifting, bodybuilding, and it's basically when you push to the absolute end of your strength and the weight just drops because you can't push any longer, right? And you're feeling absolutely physically exhausted. You can't even hold on to the weight anymore. And they would shout, the trainers shout, push to failure, push to failure, push to failure. Failure's the goal. Failure's the goal. Go, go, go. Because when you hit failure, that's when the most muscle growth occurs. Think about that. The most muscle growth occurs when you tear those muscles. They tear those muscle sinews and they can grow again, strengthen and bigger. And so when we avoid failure, we stop ourselves from growing. We stop ourselves from growing. But pushing the limits of failure is when we learn the most about how far we can go.
Yes.
And, everybody's going to hit times in this business journey where you're going to overcome, failure and fear, and you're going to get to this place where you start to grow and it's exciting, and then you're going to reach a certain level. Maybe you reach, rising star 3 and 6, and you're like, oh, we're here. Oh man, this is good. Wow. Okay, great. Let's just take a break and let's just, woo, that was like a bit of pressure. And one of the key things to do is you don't want to lose momentum, because when you're in the habit of pushing, when you're in the habit of risking, in the habit of pushing through, you want to keep going and you want to keep momentum. And so one of the things that we want to encourage you is, you know what? See failure as a part of the goal. One of the greatest books I ever read in my life was written by a man named John Maxwell. And he said in this book something I'll never forget. He said, you do not necessarily learn from failure. You learn from evaluated failures. Meaning, did you evaluate why you failed? Right? Evaluate why if you felt a certain way after a conversation. Did you evaluate why you felt that way? If someone said something to you and you didn't like what they said, or it made you feel uncomfortable, did you evaluate why they might have said that? Or did you just come away and go, I didn't like the feeling that I had then. I don't think this business is for me. That you did not learn anything from it. Evaluated experiences, evaluated fears, evaluated failures is how you're truly going to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So good, Sean. You know what? I love how you said before, see failure as part of your goal. Then you'll know you succeed, right? How good is that? See failure as part of your goal, so you'll know that's how I'm going to succeed. Why? Because I'm just going to get up and try and do it again. And you know what? I'll share a secret with you. Do you know what the price of success is? You're not going to like it. It's called embarrassment. Okay, meaning sometimes we might have to embarrass ourselves because we didn't have the conversation we're hoping. The words didn't flow like we thought. And our conversation in the mirror didn't come out like our conversation in person when we had it at the playground, what we practiced, right? You know what? That's okay. It's worth the price, because why? I like what Sean said before. It helps us to grow. Failure helps us to grow. If we every time avoid to fail, then we actually just stay there. We don't actually grow. Mm-hmm. Faith is simply one step of certainty against the onslaught of uncertainty.
That's so good. It's just one step. That's all you got to do. Win the day. Did you take one step forward towards overcoming whatever is stopping you? That fear of whatever it is, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of, not being everything being perfect. Like, did you take one step in faith forward? Yes, there's an onslaught of uncertainty coming your way. That's why we call it a great cloud of witnesses, coaches and mentors who've gone before you and say, hey, we've been down this road. We've faced these things. And let us tell you, it's worth it. That's why I remember Chuck Onuma saying to us, Sean and Rena, we can't wait to have you on the beaches of the world with us. What are they saying? They're saying at the end of this path is the beaches of the world, and we can hang out and talk about all the things you overcome and all the people you got to help along the way. The first decision you have to make is commit to the path. And one of the greatest ways to overcome fear is to commit all in to the path. That definite of purpose, saying, I'm going to follow through. I'm going to stick this out, whatever it takes, for as long as it takes. And let us finish tonight by saying this. There's a famous speaker, preacher, Kenneth Hagin, from many years ago. And he said this. He said, if you are willing to be consistent and persistent forever, it won't take very long to get what you really want. And I remember hearing that being, if you are willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes, it won't take very, actually, he says forever. It won't actually take very long. And one of the secrets to overcoming fear is you have to learn to act confident, even while your legs are shaking, even while your voice is quivering, even while you still face uncertainty. You take one step in faith forward, because we know that only action cures fear. What cures fear?
Action.
Only Action
Yeah.
cures fear. So next time you're sitting on your bed, sitting on your phone, sitting in the car, sitting on the couch, and you're thinking, I can't, you're about to have conversation, you're about to bail on massaging, you're about to bail on DTMing, you're about to bail on whatever, deepening the conversation. Remember, only action cures fear. And on the other side of you being brave with your life is transforming somebody else's life. On the other side of you being brave with your life is becoming the person you always dreamed and believed that you could be. And there are many testimonies of people here today who are on this call tonight and in this organization and in this business who have been brave with their life, and they've learned to reframe losses into lessons, reframe trials into triumphs, reframe being a victim into being a victor, and reframe disappointment into learning. And so, you know what? The opposite of success, it's not failure.
Yes.
The opposite of success is quitting. If you fail, you're on the right track.
Yes.
If you quit, then you don't succeed.
This is a copyrighted program of The Collective, powered by Marker Man Productions, affiliated with MarkerNet Incorporated. Duplication of this program is strictly prohibited.